The sun hung in the sky like a blister waiting to pop. It was a stagnant Sunday in the suburbs, the kind where the air feels like it's been chewed on by a golden retriever before it reaches your lungs. I was on my knees in the guest bathroom, a place that hadn't seen a guest since the divorce, attacking the grout with a toothbrush that had previously been used to scrub the white walls of my lawnmower. I was a man possessed. I was also a man digesting a slurry of 3-day-old Texas recluse chili mixed into a shaker bottle with 2 scoops of bulk bro strawberry whey that had technically expired during the second Bush administration. The viscosity was problematic. It coated my throat like industrial sealant, but I needed the protein. I always needed the protein. My stomach made a sound. It wasn't a rumble. It was a structural complaint. It sounded like a bag of wet gravel being thrown down a metal slide. I ignored it. The grout was turning a pleasing shade of eggshell, and I had a rhythm going. Scrub, sip, gurgle. Scrub, sip, gurgle. Then the doorbell rang. It cut through the silence like a gunshot. I froze. The sudden cessation of movement confused my lower intestine. The pressure spiked. It felt less like gas and more like I had swallowed a hydraulic press that was slowly expanding. I stood up, my knees popping in sympathy with my gut, and waddled toward the door. The floorboards groaned. I groaned. I opened the door. Standing there was a young man in a short-sleeved dress shirt and a tie that looked like it was made of optical illusion puzzles. He held a pamphlet titled, "Are You Ready for the End?" "Good afternoon, sir," he beamed, his teeth aggressively white against the dull beige of my siding. "I'd like to share a message about—" I tried to speak. I wanted to tell him to leave, to save himself, that the reactor core was critical. But as I opened my mouth, the seal broke at the other end. It wasn't a noise. It was a frequency. A low, vibrating hum that rattled the change in my pocket. The release was hot. Impossibly hot. It felt like I was expelling the exhaust of a diesel truck driving through a volcano. The smell hit the porch instantly. It didn't smell like flatulence. It smelled like burning hair wrapped in a wet diaper, dipped in sulfur, and set on fire inside a rendering plant. The air shimmered, actually shimmered, distorting the light around the young man. His smile froze, then it melted. He wheezed. The synthetic fibers of his tie began to curl. The pamphlet in his hand turned brown and curled up like a dead spider. He clutched his throat, his eyes rolling back into his head as if trying to look at his own brain for answers that weren't there. He didn't fall backward. He crumpled straight down, like a marionette whose strings had been cut by a pair of rusty scissors. I stood there, panting, the taste of strawberry whey rising in my throat, staring at the heap of polyester and good intentions smoking on my welcome mat. I was currently engaged in the act of dragging a comatose religious solicitor across my threshold by his sensible rubber-soled loafers. The friction coefficient of the polyester suit against the hardwood was surprisingly high. It made a sound like a wet balloon being rubbed against a chalkboard. Squeak thud, squeak thud. I had just managed to get his torso over the welcome mat when a shadow fell across my lawn. It was a wide shadow, a rectangular shadow.
"That's a clean drop, Frank. Very clean."
I froze. My hands were still gripping the witness's ankles. I looked up. Standing at the edge of my driveway, holding a pair of hedge clippers with menacing casualness, was my neighbor, Vinny. Vinny was a man shaped like a vending machine that had been left out in the rain. He wore a velour tracksuit the color of a vascular bruise. He was standing directly in the fallout zone. The air around him was still visibly rippling from the heat of my discharge, yet he didn't flinch. He didn't gag. He breathed deep, his nostrils flaring like a stallion, but there was no recognition of the biological war crime I had just committed. "Vinny," I said, trying to block his view of the body with my own inadequate calves. He fainted." Low blood sugar. I'm taking him inside for juice. Vinny stepped closer. He walked right through the lingering miasma. A sparrow that had been flying overhead fell out of the sky and landed with a soft plap on Vinny's shoulder. Vinny flicked it off like it was dandruff.
Cut the crap, Frank!
Vinny rasped. His voice sounded like he gargled with gravel and kerosene.
I saw the heat signature. I saw the distortion. You didn't hit him with a fist. You hit him with the spicy air. The invisible hammer.
He gestured with the hedge clippers toward his own face.
You know about my condition, right? The fondue incident of '98?
I nodded slowly. The neighborhood legend was that Vinny had fallen face first into a vat of boiling gruyère during a dispute over a loan shark's vigorous interest rates. His olfactory nerves had been cauterized instantly by the molten cheese. He was the only man on earth immune to me.
I can't smell the flowers, Frank. I can't smell the garbage. And I can't smell whatever unholy brew you got fermenting in that colon of yours. But I know power when I see it.
Vinny looked down at the witness, whose skin was beginning to turn a shade of gray, usually reserved for naval battleships.
I work for people, Frank. People who appreciate specialized skill sets. We got guys who break kneecaps. We got guys who cook books. But we don't have a guy who can clear a room without drawing a weapon.
He pulled a business card out of his velour pocket. It was heavy stock, bone white. It just said Donatelli Imports and had a phone number.
Leave the kid,
Vinny said, nodding at the body.
The fumes are preserving him. He'll wake up in an hour thinking he was abducted by aliens. You come with me. We got cannolis to eat, and we got a future to discuss.
I looked at the card. I looked at the unconscious witness. I felt a bubble of gas move into my descending colon, heavier this time, a warning shot. Does the job offer dental? I asked.
Frank?
Vinny smiled, and it was terrifying.
The job offers everything.
The lab was located in the back of a butchery in the meatpacking district. It was cold enough to see your breath, or, in my case, see the visible toxic shimmer of my impending doom. Carcasses of beef swung slowly on hooks like pendulum clocks, counting down to a heart attack. Vinny introduced me to the team. First was Sal the Spatula, a man who used to be a short-order cook until he fried a health inspector. Second was Dr. Arnaldo, a gastroenterologist who lost his license for trying to replace a man's appendix with a cannoli. "All right, Frank," Dr. Arnaldo said, adjusting a pair of heavy industrial goggles. "We need to baseline your ballistics. Step into the containment unit." The containment unit was a retrofitted telephone booth lined with lead and what looked like asbestos oven mitts stapled to the walls. I stepped inside. It was tight, claustrophobic.
Commence. Phase 1. The loader,
Sal barked. He slid a metal tray through a slot. On it sat a single glistening pickled egg and a shot glass of lukewarm buttermilk.
Eat,
Sal commanded.
We need to see what a .22 caliber round looks like.
I ate. The egg was rubbery, bouncing against my molars. The buttermilk was thick. I swallowed. We waited. The silence in the meat locker was heavy, broken only by the hum of the ventilation fans fighting a losing battle. 10 minutes later, I felt the bubble. It was small, sharp, a sniper round. "Fire in the hole," I warned. Pfft. It was a short, sharp report. Outside the booth, a potted fern instantly turned black and crumbled into dust. A Geiger counter held by Dr. Arnaldo began to scream. "Impressive," Arnaldo noted, scribbling on a clipboard. "Toxicity levels at 400%, but we need stopping power. We need heavy artillery. Sal, bring out the bean burrito supreme, extra onions, left in the sun for 2 hours." The next hour was a blur of mastication and misery. I consumed fiber at a rate that would kill a horse. I ate cabbage that tasted like sadness. I drank protein shakes that had the texture of wet cement. With every course, the weapon grew stronger. When I finally unleashed the magnum load, fueled by a terrifying mixture of lentil soup and espresso, the glass of the telephone booth didn't just crack. It fogged up instantly with a yellow haze so dense it looked like mustard gas. The door blew off its hinges. The side of beef hanging nearest to me didn't just cook. It jerked as if electrocuted and fell off the hook, gray and lifeless. Vinny nodded, tears streaming from his eyes, not from the smell but from the sheer beauty of the destruction.
"He's ready,"
Vinny choked out. Then came the tailor, an old man who measured my inseam with trembling hands. He presented me with the suit. It was Italian silk, midnight blue, but the trousers were a marvel of engineering. Reinforced stitching, a charcoal-lined gusset, a discreet vent disguised as a pleat that acted as a suppressor. I put it on. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see Frank, the suburban dad who scrubbed grout. I saw a weapon. I saw a tragedy.
"What do we call you?"
Sal asked. I adjusted my tie, feeling a rumble deep in my core. "The Gasman," I said. The velvet lounge was a misnomer. There was no velvet. There was only formica, despair, and a carpet that hadn't been shampooed since the Carter administration. The back room, where Slick Mickey held court, was worse. It was a subterranean bunker of vice, a windowless concrete box buried under an abandoned laundromat. The air was already thick with cigar smoke, cheap cologne, and the smell of desperation. Ideally, this was a tactical disadvantage. For me, it was a force multiplier. I sat across from Mickey. He looked like a ferret that had been dipped in olive oil and dressed in a suit that cost more than my car. He was chewing on a toothpick with aggressive arrogance.
"You in or out, Gasman?"
Mickey sneered. He didn't know the moniker was literal. He thought it was an ironic nickname, like calling a fat guy slim. "I'm thinking," I said. My voice was tight, strained. I was currently at DEFCON 2. Before the game, I had consumed the payload, a quart of buttermilk, a pound of roasted garlic, and a bran muffin that tasted like compressed sawdust. The mixture was currently navigating the treacherous curves of my sigmoid colon. The pressure was immense. It felt like I was carrying a bowling ball made of hot magma in my pelvis. I needed to release. But the waitress, a sweet, older woman named Brenda, who smelled like peppermint and fatigue, kept refilling the water glasses. She was hovering in the splash zone. I couldn't do it. I was a monster, but I wasn't rude. "Fold," I grunted, throwing my cards down. My sphincter was currently performing a feat of strength that defied physics. It was the Hoover Dam holding back a tidal wave of toxic sludge. Sweat beaded on my forehead. It was cold and oily. My stomach let out a sound like a whale dying in a cavern.
"You hungry, pal?"
Mickey laughed, raking in a pot of chips.
"Sound like you got a demon in there."
"You have no idea," I whispered. Finally, Brenda left the room to get more scotch. The door clicked shut. It was just me, Mickey, and two of his goons. The dealer flipped the river card. "The Queen of Hearts." Mickey grinned.
"All in."
I looked him in the eye. "Call." I shifted my weight to the left buttock, lifting the right cheek to align the silencer vent of my suit. I released the lock. It wasn't silent. The suppressor failed under the sheer velocity of the expulsion. Brap twack. The sound was distinct. It sounded like a trombone made of wet leather being played by a furious elephant. The chair vibrated so violently it scooted an inch across the floor. Mickey's smile didn't fade. It just stopped working. He sniffed the air, confused. Then the invisible wall hit him. It was instantaneous. The cigar in his mouth didn't just go out. It disintegrated. His eyes watered, then rolled back. The goon to his left tried to stand, clawing at his neck, but his legs gave out, turning to jelly. I stood up, grabbing the pot of chips with one hand while covering my nose with the other. "I think I'll cash out," I said. Mickey didn't answer. He was face down on the felt, twitching rhythmically as the paint on the walls began to blister. Success is a double-edged sword, and in my case, The sword was coated in enteric bacteria. The hit on Mickey had been too clean, too efficient. Don Donatelli didn't see a man with a medical condition anymore. He saw an intercontinental ballistic missile in a polyester blend suit.
The triad,
Donatelli whispered, leaning over his mahogany desk. He slid a photo across the wood. It showed 5 men sitting in a steam room, wrapped in towels.
They meet at the Golden Bamboo Sauna at 4 p.m. Heat opens the pores, Frank. It maximizes absorption. I need you to go nuclear.
Nuclear meant the forbidden combo. Back at the lab, Dr. Arnaldo looked pale. He was wearing a full hazmat suit. He placed the tray in front of me with a pair of tongs. God forgive us, Arnaldo muttered. The meal was an affront to nature. First, a whole durian fruit smelling like a gym sock stuffed with custard and left in a damp basement for a summer. Second, a tin of surströmming, fermented Baltic herring that legally counts as a chemical weapon in 3 countries. Finally, a big gulp of whole milk. I am lactose intolerant to a degree that doctors have described as violently allergic. I ate it. I ate it with the stoicism of a man walking to the gallows. The herring popped in my mouth like salty, rotten grapes. The durian coated my tongue in a film of sweet sewage. The milk acted as the accelerant. By 3:30 p.m., I was in my 2014 Honda Civic, merging onto the I-95. The target was 20 minutes away. The digestion timer was set for 30. Then, disaster. Red lights. A sea of them. Construction. 2 lanes merged into one. I sat in the gridlock, the sun beating down on the roof of the Civic. My AC had died 3 years ago. The interior temperature climbed to 90 degrees. Then the first contraction hit. It wasn't a rumble, it was a tectonic shift. My stomach actually expanded, pressing against the steering wheel. I gripped the leather at 10 and 2 until my knuckles turned white. A bead of sweat, cold and oily, rolled down my nose. Gurgle thunk. The sound was audible over the radio. It sounded like a boot being pulled out of deep mud. Not yet, I gritted out, clenching every muscle from my diaphragm to my knees. Hold the line. The milk was curdling. The herring was fermenting. The durian was weaponizing. My intestines were no longer organs. They were a biological pressure cooker rapidly approaching critical mass. The Civic began to smell like ozone and burning tires, and I hadn't even released yet. I was sweating pure toxin. I looked at the clock, 3:55 p.m. Traffic started to inch forward. I let out a whimper that sounded disturbingly like a deflating bagpipe. I had to get to the sauna. If I blew the seal here, inside the car, they'd find my skeleton bleached white in a pile of melted upholstery. I parked the Civic on the sidewalk. I didn't care. I walked into the Golden Bamboo Sauna with the stiff-legged, terrifying gait of a man carrying a tray of crystal glasses across a trampoline during an earthquake. The receptionist tried to ask for a membership card. I simply stared at her with eyes that were bloodshot vessels of pure agony. She let me pass. I stumbled into the locker room. I stripped off the suit, my containment field, shaking as the cold air hit my sweating skin. I wrapped a towel around my waist. It felt like wrapping a ribbon around a stick of dynamite. I pushed open the door to the steam room. It was hot, humid. The triad leaders were there, 5 of them, sitting on the cedar benches like statues carved from hate. The boss, a man with a dragon tattoo that covered his entire neck, looked up. "Private meeting," he growled. "Get out." I looked at him. I looked at the cedar walls. I looked at the thermometer reading 110 degrees. The heat was the trigger. The milk and herring slurry in my gut boiled. "I'm afraid," I whispered, clutching my stomach, "that I cannot do that." I sat down. I released the seal. It wasn't a noise. It was a tear in the fabric of reality. It started as a low, wet rumble, like a mudslide carrying a house down a mountain, and escalated into a high-pitched shriek of escaping gas. The effect was instantaneous. The steam in the room didn't just mix with the gas, it bound to it. The white mist turned a violent, sickly yellow. The smell hit them like a physical punch. It tasted of sulfur, ancient fish, and the darkest regrets of mankind. The triad boss opened his mouth to scream, but he made the fatal mistake of inhaling. His eyes widened, then crossed. He clawed at the air, his dragon tattoo seemingly trying to crawl off his neck to escape the toxicity. The cedar wood planks behind me didn't just warp, they hissed. The varnish bubbled and peeled away like skin. The glass of the door shattered outward, unable to contain the pressure variance. I sat in the center of the yellow cloud, eyes watering, feeling light, feeling empty, feeling powerful. Epilogue. The news called it a freak methane pocket explosion caused by a faulty sewer main. The golden bamboo was condemned. They had to bury the rubble in a lead-lined landfill in Nevada. They never found a body, just a melted towel. I live in Scotland now, the Highlands. I have a small cottage on a cliff where the wind blows at 40 miles an hour, 24 hours a day. It's the only place safe for me, the only place safe for them. I stand on the edge of the cliff, looking out at the churning gray sea, eating a bowl of haggis. I am no longer Frank. I am a myth. I am a warning. I am the Gasman, and I am always loaded.